Hi everyone, I'm Courtney Poole and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to tell you the story of how I went from totally sedentary, inactive, and unfit to getting back into fitness and then continuing that consistently. This story is from a number of years ago, but I like telling it because I think it's a good strategy for how you can kind of get fit after you've been sedentary for a while. And I think also it's a good way to talk about different reasons emotionally why we get into a place of not being able to be consistent with certain habits and why that is. And I think that even though this story is about fitness, as you'll see, a lot of the things that I'll discuss after I tell you this story are really applicable to health and nutrition as well. And the bigger question of like, why do we get stuck in ruts? Why do we not always take action? Why do we have these best intentions but we don't follow through with them? Whether it's our food or our fitness or some other aspect of our health. So I'm going to tell you the story about how I made that change. And then I want to use that story to talk about different topics, like I said, related to some of the emotions, the psychology of it, I suppose, and really to talk about how the all or nothing tendencies that we tend to exhibit with regards to fitness and our eating, how those all or nothing tendencies really prevent a lot of positive change and the importance of rejecting all or nothing tendencies. So first I'm going to tell you the story. So the background a little bit for my personal fitness journey to illustrate the story. So I grew up pretty fit, pretty athletic. I started competitively swimming at the age of about 8, and that was my main sport throughout school, the rest of my schooling. And I got quite good at it. By the time I was in high school, I was on varsity teams. We were winning state championships. I also picked up water polo as a sport when I got into high school, so I was on that team as well. And by the end of high school, and obviously previously through my life, all my life, I'd been very active. I'd also done other sports when I was a kid, dabbled in other ones, and I generally just liked physical activity. And I liked being outside, and I liked these kinds of things. But water sports were what really hung on. And by the time I was towards the end of high school, I was captain on some of those teams, and I was, performing fairly highly, and I was training a lot. I was very fit. I still had the overeating issues, but I sort of got away with them because of how fit I was. So towards the end of that, I would often be training 6 days a week. And a light training day would be like 2 hours a day of training. But there were days that I did probably up to like 5 hours, something like that, maybe a bit more or less, of training in a day. Sometimes we'd have 2-a-day swim practices, and then we'd also have a bit of like some sort of cross training or weight training that was meant to help with the swimming or the water polo. And then on top of that, I had like normal PE class at school, which sometimes fell onto the same days that I had all this other training. So I was really, really, really active, and I was that way for the last couple of years of high school. And then high school ended, and there's a combination of things that happened. One thing was that I ended up choosing a college or university that I wasn't going for mainly for athletics. They actually didn't even have a swim team or a water polo team. And so immediately, my activity level went down. Additionally, that was also the time that due to a lot of other things in my life, I started becoming a binge eater, whereas I had been an overeater really for all of my life before. Maybe sort of semi-binges, but it was less severe, but by this point it was really turning the corner where I was really becoming a full-fledged binge eater. So between those two factors, I gained about 65 pounds in 2 years. And by the time I gained all that weight, I had become pretty much completely sedentary. Um, and I was really uncomfortable in my body. I didn't feel fit. And, the binge eating, or sorry, the weight that I had was mainly due to the binge eating. That was more of the factor than my lack of fitness. But obviously, being totally sedentary does not help with weight loss or with weight maintenance or with, overall health. So I knew I needed to get back into fitness. But what would happen, and I think this is common for a lot of people, is I was always intending to get back into it. And guess what? Nothing really stuck. So I would, go on a long hike and then I wouldn't do anything for 3 weeks. Or I'd start on some kind of home workout program and I'd do 2 days and that was, that was it. I didn't keep going with it. So after a while of that, I had this sit down with myself and I had this conversation with myself. And the conversation basically went like this. I was like, you know what? My issue with this is that I am not doing anything consistently. If I'm going to have benefits from this, it's got to be something that I do consistently. I can't just do a workout once a month or twice a month and then the rest of time be sedentary and, hope that things are going to feel better. It's just not going to happen. And what I realized was that I was constantly pressuring myself to do a large amount of exercise regularly, just like I always had done when I was an athlete. And the problem was I wasn't an athlete anymore, in the sense I wasn't competing for anything, but I still somehow thought I should be doing the kind of level of exercise that I used to be doing. And I sort of had this, it sounds kind of maybe a little bit extreme, but I kind of had this idea. I was like, well, I used to do 2 to 5 hours a day, so at least I should be doing an hour and a half a day or an hour a day or something like that, But it wasn't happening, right? And I realized, maybe I'm just having this all or nothing thing happen where I'm saying it needs to be all, it needs to be something similar to what I used to do, or what would end up happening is I just wouldn't do anything, right? So I would I didn't always realize this was going on consciously, but I would tell myself, today I need to go on that hour and a half or that 2 hour workout, or I need to go on that 3 hour hike or something. But then of course not every day you've got energy for it, and for various reasons it just didn't do it. And I realized that I had all of these kind of emotions caught up with this all or nothing thing. So I realized I needed to be consistent, and I asked myself this question. I was like, okay, if I had to commit to a certain amount of exercise, and I was going to do that amount of exercise maybe 6 days a week, or pretty much every day, 6 days a week. And if I was going to do it every day, how much would I really be willing to commit to? And the number that came back, I didn't even think about it. There was just a number that popped into my head. The number that came back was 8 minutes. The 8 minutes hit me, that answer, and I just started crying. I just had this huge, huge cry about feeling so pathetic, feeling like I used to be this athlete. I've got 12 state medals in swimming. I've got, I was high performing, and now I'm looking at doing 8 minutes, and I felt there's just all these emotions. And I felt shame. I felt just this sense of devastation and sadness about kind of what had happened with my relationship with food, and kind of what I had, some of it was probably a bit self-punishing, so I'm not encouraging self-punishment, but I also think that there also was just some release of shame and release of sadness about kind of what had happened in the last few years, because for me the binge eating was very, it was very much related to a lot of suppressed emotions and a lot of stuff with family and things. And so I was sad about what I'd done with food and how that had affected my health, and this position that I was in now with my weight and health and feeling so uncomfortable. And I realized that, what was holding me back from really starting anything is because I had this expectation that it's got to be all or nothing. I felt ashamed of doing something that was more moderate. I felt, there was all these emotions that I was preventing. So I had this big cry about where I was, what had happened, how I felt, and as usually happens with good cries, I felt relieved after. And I felt after that cry, I was like, right, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do 8 minutes. And I really didn't like manipulate myself into doing more. I was really careful to not say, well, I said I was gonna do 8 minutes, but like really we know that like I'm gonna do 30. Like I really, even though I still had some shame about it, I really like stuck with that. I was like, right, 8 minutes. That's what I feel. And by the way, obviously the 8 minutes wasn't, when I was asking myself what would I be willing to commit to? Obviously, physically, my body was capable of more than 8 minutes, but the question that I had asked myself was really, what do I think I could really commit to emotionally, like really do on a consistent basis? So I started doing 8 minutes, and at the time I lived very rurally in Arizona, and so what I would do is I usually bike, or sometimes I'd do like a power walk with some good music, or maybe a little bit of a jog. Sometimes it was some other activity, but I would literally go out from my house, I'd look at my clock and I'd time it 4 minutes, and then when it hit the 4 minutes, I'd go 4 minutes back. And 8 minutes, and that was it. I didn't make myself do more, I just did it with 8 minutes. And lo and behold, because I think I had resolved that it was okay to not be all or nothing, plus the emotions that I went through, which I want to talk about a bit more, I started doing 8 minutes very, very regularly. And I started feeling better about myself. There was some tough parts. I didn't feel comfortable in workout clothes. I didn't sort of like how I was sweating with that much weight. Like there was all this stuff, but I tried to be gentle with myself and not beat myself up and just do the 8 minutes. And at the same time, I was working on some of the root causes of why I was binge eating as well. But the combination of those things meant that I started building up my cardiovascular health again, which had pretty much gone kaput. And I started building up a little bit of muscle strength and for the particular activities I was doing. And eventually I got to the place where I was like, I think I could bump this up. And so I bumped it up to like, I don't know, I think I remember doing it really slowly. Like I think I bumped it up to like 12 minutes a day. So I'd go 6 minutes out and 6 minutes back, and then 20, and then 30, and then so on. And it helped me build up the momentum, and I, started losing some weight because of the combination of the diet and the fitness changes. And that's how it changed basically. And ever since then I've stayed pretty fit. I've never gone back to the kind of exercise that I did whenever I was an athlete. That hasn't felt necessary for me to go back to. But, that's really what jogged things, literally, that's what jogged things along for me to get out of the rut that I had been in for a few years. So I like to share this story because it was a big lesson for me. It was one of the big lessons for me in the issues with an all or nothing mindset, first of all. And I want to make some other videos on the all or nothing mindset specifically related to food, because that's a really big area that a lot of us play out that mindset. So I'll go into that more in some other future videos. But, just looking at this all or nothing mindset that we have with various aspects of our health and really recognizing it's not logical, it's not helpful, it just doesn't work. It's much better to be gentle, choose something that feels sustainable, and really look more at the consistency than you're looking at like the sort of quantity of time or whatever measurement we're looking at. It's bottom line is it's mostly about consistency. What can you do on a consistent basis? So that's the first thing. Whether you're looking at fitness or food or any aspect, look at the areas where you're thinking of it in an all or nothing mindset, that if you can't do it all, there's no point in doing anything. If you can't do it perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. These kinds of things. And reject that. Don't follow that logic, because that's just not logical. But also, the other thing I like to talk about with this story is I think that one of the big reasons, one of the big reasons why I was able to get myself out of that rut is because I finally was like, right, I'll just do 8 minutes. I'm going to stop this thing of like, I've got to do these huge long workouts or I'm not going to do anything. That was one of the things that helped me get out. But the other thing that helped me get out was going through some of those emotions. And I did have more of those emotions come up kind of like as I started, I had the big cry kind of like after the realization that maybe I was just going to start with 8 minutes. But I had more, after that too. And I think that the letting go of those emotions, feeling those emotions, letting myself just have the cry, I think that was one of the big things that shifted things as well. And I think that is one of the reasons why we get caught up in all or nothing mindsets too, is because we are trying to prevent emotions that would get triggered if we didn't do it perfectly, or if we, you know what I mean? Like I had a lot of emotions that really came back to family and childhood stuff around where I was in my life and with what had happened with weight and, stuff about fitness as well. And I needed to go through those emotions. And I think the more that I went through those emotions, the easier it made it to not fall into the all or nothing trap. So I encourage everyone to go through those kinds of emotions. Be careful about the self-judgment ones and the self-punishment ones, because those aren't going to be helpful. But some of the other emotions that are there are really ones that when we suppress and store up, they cause us to have inaction. They cause us to not want to even take small steps. So whether it's fitness or something else, I encourage you to take small steps. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't compare yourself to how you used to be or how you think you should be or how your friend is, or, just start with what you're at, where you're at. Start with where you're at and come up with a plan that you feel is accessible to you emotionally at the time. Meanwhile, feeling through the other emotions that come up as you do it. So that was the story I wanted to share today. Hopefully it's helpful for some people. And like I said, I want to talk more about the all or nothing mindset and behavior with regards to food and eating in a lot more detail, because that's something I talk to clients about all the time. It's a very common thing to struggle with. So look for videos coming up on that soon, and I'll talk to you all soon. Best of luck with whatever kind of fitness that you might choose to get into in the future. All right, bye everyone.